L.A. Creative Technologies President Josh Weiss joins us to talk about the demonic possession of Rich Freeman, as well as news from ConnectWise, Linksys, and Lenovo, plus a special guest interview with David Friend of Wasabi Technologies on the future of hot cloud storage. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 162, the ExorRich. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode 162. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for people like you. And who are people like you? You are people like you, the VARs, the integrators, the MSPs, the MSSPs, the all of those types of industries and careers and things. If you work with things with lots of acronyms, lots of letters, you know, the ML, PLSs, all of those are all you. And this show is for you. If you are a ticket taker at the local zoo, you are here because you are trying to look for a new career, and we welcome you as well. Joining me this week and every week is our co-host here on Channel Pro Weekly, my good friend, the executive editor, the one who makes everything happen here at Channel Pro, Rich Freeman.
Hey there.
How Rich, you doing? Good to see you.
You too.
How are things in Seattle? I know it's not as smoky, although it seems like the smoke returned for a little while.
We got a little bit of the smoke back, but nothing like we had before, so I'm not complaining about that. And the sun is shining as we speak right now in Seattle, so that's good too. That won't last all that much longer. We're kind of heading into that time of year where it starts to get a little gloomier. So this is nice.
Excellent. Well, glad to be back. For those who are regulars who listen or watch regularly, know that we kind of did a shorter special edition kind of episode last week because it was an event week for us, and we weren't able to do our normal full size episode recording. But Rich, you know, it's kind of funny, and you pointed this out in an email, and I totally laughed. Is like when we set out to do something short, you know, short sponsored, and something kind of a little bit different. We still ended up recording over an hour.
It is pretty crazy. And yeah, we had been saying going into that, well, let's just, you know, we've got an event coming up. We don't have a lot of time. Let's just kind of bang out something fast. Something quick. Yeah, it was still what anyone else would consider a pretty long podcast episode.
It's not Channel Pro Weekly if it's not something you can listen to over the course of many trips in the car. But Rich, I'm glad to say that we, despite having a great guest interview coming up later in the show with David Friend, it's an amazing interview. You absolutely want to stick around for that. We also have a guest host who's going to join us for probably not the whole show, but a good chunk of the show. And we're super excited to have him here. He's an IT expert with more than a decade of experience in the technology and entrepreneurial startup sectors. In 2008, he founded L.A. Creative Technologies with the goal of helping other creative innovators manage their business and cybersecurity needs. Please welcome the president and founder of L.A. Creative Technologies, Josh Weiss. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, it's so good to be here.
I do hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Sure did, man.
It's like a 1 in 5 chance I'll get it right. So I'm glad I
spared me the indignity of being a Weiss today.
Josh Weiss. That's got a good ring to it, a little bit, you know, like a French flair that you got to roll with. So welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. For those who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about LA Creative Technologies.
Well, I mean, it's fun to be here with David Friend because my background also comes from the creative world. I have 20 years. I've been working in tech and also in music. I was a DJ and an event producer as well until that stopped being a thing about 7 months ago here. But yeah, my network, half of our clients are nonprofits. A lot of them work in the arts sector. But we're very focused on cybersecurity, and we're very focused on digital transformation, which is something that I've always loved to talk about. And here in the midst of the pandemic, it's become more important than ever to look at digital transformation. I'm also I do a lot of speaking in the MSP space. I spoke at what was probably one of the last in-person events of 2020, which was the AVIC conference back in January in Santa Barbara. I was on the cover of ChannelPro a couple of years ago. Thank you, Rich. And I collaborate very closely with the Continuum ConnectWise guys as well. And yeah, I love the community. I love the space. I like to talk about what's happening in this world. And it'll be fun to be here on the show today.
I was actually at that AVIC show with you. That was back in mid-January, and that was sort of like a perfect encapsulation of the different parts of your life, because we were kind of talking technology, and you were, you know, there to talk about technology, but you also DJ'd the party, if I remember right.
Forgot about that. I did. I was actually one of the last DJ events I did because most of the DJ world was on sort of on winter hiatus at that time. So
So what are you doing to keep your DJing skills fresh? Are you like one of those kind of people that we see on like the YouTube videos where you're setting up your DJ equipment like on your balcony and playing out for the whole city?
I'm gonna be totally honest. It has completely and utterly stopped for me. I What's funny is what happened is I've built up a wealth of content for my business instead, and it makes me a little bit sad. I think that there's something so insane about the fact that sort of developed this thing for 20 years and it just like went away. So I am not one of the people you see doing live streams. I think a lot of the people that you see doing that are people who essentially got unemployed by the pandemic. And thankfully, that was not how I paid my bills. It was more of a hobby that had a way of paying money sometimes. But I don't know, maybe this is a little bit soft for an IT business interview, but it's almost like just like emotionally, the whole thought of everything that turned off and all the closed venues and closed bars and stuff is almost like made it hard for me to focus on music these days. So I'm sure it's going to come back. I'm sure it's not over forever. But I think the combination of just how difficult it is to watch all the changes in the industry. And I mean, I'm going to leave a pretty intense example here, but I was talking to my buddy who I co-founded my LA music project with about a decade ago. And he said it's almost as if you had invested in the asbestos industry and become an expert in asbestos and then found out how unhealthy asbestos was. But like that's what it feels like for him, right? I mean, having invested so much. And I was just looking through my LinkedIn the other day trying to invite people to an event I'm doing, and I'm looking at so many people who have invested in music events or event technology or in-person this or in-person that in the music space, and it's like done. I mean, it's just crazy. So there's that impact, and then combined with the fact that I really wanted to get so much more content done anyway for my business, that it's just been an opportunity to focus my creative efforts in another direction. But it's been pretty weird. I mean, I have two clients who actually produce concerts for what they do. They're nonprofits. Thankfully, they do outdoor events. And so there actually is going to be a 2021 season. But I mean, how weird to watch these organizations pivot what they're doing. And it's just been strange to sort of serve in an advisory role for those businesses and watch what all my friends are going through in the event industry as well. It's been a weird year.
Well, and it sounds like some of those companies are maybe clients as well. I mean, what kind of year has it been for LA Creative Technologies?
Well, I mean, thankfully, like I said, I have those two, our primary people that are directly impacted are these two nonprofits, which both do outdoor concert seasons in the sort of greater downtown LA area. Both of them did not touch their spend this year, which was incredible. I think it's going to be more interesting to see what next year looks like. And, we worked for a lot of nonprofits and none of them changed their spend this year. I think the bigger question is, what does the donor landscape look like next year? And that'll be more to see. But I think almost because they're not for profit, they had set budgets for the year already and nothing really changed. So LA creative wise, it's been harder to grow than we would have liked, but we're set and stable for the year. I just, I'm sure other podcasts, you guys have talked about this as well. The big what if is what happens if no stimulus comes through, or, what happens. I saw just this week that Coachella has once again pushed from April 2021 to October. And, what happens when, because in my perspective, it was really South by Southwest and Coachella that set the stage, not only for the music and creative industries, but almost like everything. It was after South by Southwest canceled that I think we all knew that this thing was going to be serious. And so, I'm fine for now. And I just, who knows what is fire season going to bring to the West Coast? I work in nonprofits and architecture. Like, are people still going to be building buildings here in 48 months or 36 months? It's like, what's going to happen? But I think we have a lot more to worry about than my MSP if we stop building buildings on the West Coast. But I'm down here in Southern California. I spent a week on vacation in Northern California last week, and we got there the night that this new fire started. And we were cruising around wine country as wineries were burning, and it's just like, what, So I'm fine at the moment, but it's just, I think as much as we all want to make predictions and think we have some clue what's happening, it's like, it's just crazy, right? When you in Seattle, Rich, are dealing with the same thing I'm dealing here within L.A. and the same thing that we're dealing with in Northern California, it's like, we're a pretty important part of the U.S. economy, going up and down this coast, or the global economy. And I just, I can't pretend to have any idea what comes next.
Well, to that point, because as you're talking about that, I'm thinking just 2 hours ago, I was interviewing a pretty senior executive from a really big technology company about something that's going to happen in a few weeks. And at the end of the, it's a pretty standard thing for me at the end of an interview like that to say, hey, looking ahead the next 12 months, what are your plans? What are your priorities? And it's usually a pretty innocent question, and they can kind of give you a sense for what's on their radar. But, talking to this guy, I realized, how is this company or any company supposed to anticipate what the next 12 months are going to be like and make plans? Normally this is a time of year when a lot of people are creating plans for next year. As you look ahead, I mean, how as an owner of a business, how do you make plans? How do you plan ahead at all right now?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because I'm a meditator. I really try to, kind of learn from the experts that have come before, not just in business, but in sort of spirituality as well. And it's almost like focus on the present. I'm trying to plan. In some way, it's about, hey, plan really well for 3 months out, right? First, just kind of like do what's in front of us. But beyond that, I think it's like we just need to plan, and I count myself in this. We just need to plan for as close as possible to what we can anticipate. Like, I'm going to be running an annual planning session tomorrow with a pretty decent sized architecture firm. They're probably doing just south of 10 million. They've got, very large US government clients, and they're working with some of the big, top 5 startups in tech. And, they're working with a lot of blue chip names that if I could mention them, you would have heard of them. And, I think about this going in, and, when I talk to them, they're just saying, hey, you know what? Our pipeline is full right now. And so we're going to make plans based on that full pipeline today, right? And it's like, we can't do a whole lot more than maybe try to bump up our savings a little bit. I've still got my PPP loan sitting in the bank. Thankfully, I didn't have to use it. And I would think for almost every business, we're kind of basing our plans on that same thing. How are we doing today? And what does our pipeline look like as far out as we can plan? And what's going to happen? Is this K-shaped recovery going to, is that top? I keep looking like we're going to go up, the top of that K is going up the escalator. And then are we just going to fall off the top of that K? But like, who the hell knows, right? I think this is going to ask us more than ever to focus on the present and focus on what we can actually predict, right? And if something else happens, hey, we've spent 7 months adjusting really, really fast. And I think that, we're all getting a good lesson in our responsiveness. And that's what I'm doing personally. And thankfully, I've built a business that is very lean. We rely a lot on outsourcing. And, I've certainly been much more disciplined about my P&L than I ever was before. Certainly paying more attention to vendors, and certainly watching for where I can get competitive advantage by switching a vendor. I canceled a lot of things. I love my MSP tools, and I do have to say I canceled about a quarter of them this year because I can be a little undisciplined with that sign up button. I read ChannelPro too much, whatever. but yeah, I just think it's a combination of focusing on where you're at now and really sort of being able to respond faster, save money, and just, right? Because what can we do? if the Fed doesn't know what's going on, then like, what the hell do we know?
It's yeah, be lean, be nimble, and be adaptable. It definitely are three things that every business owner should be right now.
Yeah.
For
And I'm
sure.
going to tell you though, I'm glad I don't have 100 employees. Because I think we would be a lot more difficult to make my way through this right now, if I had a big payroll. And I think that it's definitely a scary time for having a big payroll, and why I like outsourcing.
That it is. That it is. Well, I know that your time is limited, and we've got some news stories that we want to go through and get your comments on as many of them as we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a story by ConnectWise.
Yeah.
And for those who are listening or watching on YouTube, we're going to kind of touch on these stories, but we're going to post links to all of them at our show notes page. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. Find the show notes page for episode 162. And then that way you can go and you can read along and you can get all the details as we kind of talk about our impressions and thoughts about all of these different stories. So the first story is a story from ConnectWise. Their COO says, integration, consistency, and growth are all up ahead. Well, Rich, this guy's predicting the future. What some can.
Yeah, there you go. Well, so this the story we're alluding to here is one that I posted, I guess last Friday. I had an opportunity that day to speak with Jeffrey Willison, the COO of ConnectWise, and it was really just kind of an opportunity to catch up with him. What we spent a lot of our time talking about right around Halloween 2019 at ConnectWise's IT Nation Connect event. Big bombshell announcement that ConnectWise and Continuum were merging. ConnectWise, I guess, officially had acquired Continuum, but those two former competitors became one company. So we're, about 11 months out from that milestone there, and a lot of what we talked about had to do with that. And his team has been working pretty hard ever since at actually turning these two very separate companies into one. And so I got some updates on that. I mean, organizationally speaking, the two companies really are kind of operating as a single company at this point. They've done most of the heavy lifting as far as that goes. There is still a lot of other work, a lot of sort of back end work that they're in the midst of, and they are at this point days away, for example, from a pretty major milestone in that integration process. If you are a ConnectWise partner and a former Continuum partner, you're actually going to begin getting one bill, unified billing across both product sets, beginning this month, beginning with your October invoice. So that's an example of the kind of thing that they've been working on. Now, when ConnectWise and Continuum came together, one of the things that the leaders of both those companies pointed out was these two companies and their specialties and their portfolios fit together really well. There wasn't a lot of overlap in terms of what they did. Continuum was strong on things like outsourced help desk and NOC and SOC. ConnectWise obviously had their tool set. The big overlap, the one overlap, really significant one, was that they both had an RMM system. And so the question kind of hanging out there ever since has been, are they both going to keep, is this combined company going to have two RMM systems, or how's that going to work? They're not talking timing yet, but they are definitely well down the road in terms of actually taking two separate RMM tools and turning them into one. I'm speculating a little bit here. There were hints dropped in this conversation that we will be getting news, some more updates about that later on. And so I'm going to guess at this year's IT Nation Connect, which is obviously going to be a virtual event, that we will get some kind of announcement from them with timing and so on for when that happens. But that'll be pretty significant. And then beyond that, there's just a lot of stuff. One of the things that even predated the Continuum acquisition is just that depending on the ConnectWise product that you were using, the company might communicate with you at different times and slightly different ways. There was sort of a lack of consistency in some of their outreach, some of their customer service with partners, and that's apparently been something that they've been working hard on this year. And so, you probably, if you're a partner, you should have experienced some of that already. If not, you'll be seeing it. It sounds like more and more, where they're really trying to have one mode of communication, one calendar for communication, et cetera, so that there is consistency regardless of the products you're using, whether they're ConnectWise, Continuum, et cetera. And then to the growth ahead point, just the last point in the headline there. I was speaking with Willison last week within days of Datto announcing that they've got an IPO coming up, and SolarWinds has talked about maybe spinning off SolarWinds MSP through an IPO as well. And I was just kind of getting some comments from him on that. And in the course of that conversation, I also just got some upbeat thoughts about where the industry is right now. I mean, I totally agree with everything you were saying, Josh, about the uncertainty and what happens if there isn't a second stimulus wave and all of that. But it sounds like in the conversations that ConnectWise is having with its partners right now, that they're detecting more optimism, more hope for growth from their MSPs, at least the ones who have come through the recession so far in reasonably good shape. And they're actually, there were reports in the media earlier this year that there were layoffs. Something like 4% of the ConnectWise payroll was let go earlier in the year because they were concerned about the state of the industry and the state of the economy. But they're hiring now at all 16 of their offices worldwide because they feel like they need to start building up in anticipation of what they see as growth within their MSP channel. So, they're feeling a little bit more upbeat about the future because at least some of their partners are too.
Yeah, it's really interesting for me since I'm a ConnectWise and a Continuum partner, and I've worked very closely with Continuum for years. How do I want to say this? I've seen a lot since that purchase happened. I think one of the concerns that I have personally is that Continuum is a very, very personable company. I've had a lot of personal contacts all over Continuum over the years. ConnectWise has always been a little bit more of like a faceless Borg, right? I mean, I think a classic example is that everyone at Continuum always has a named account manager, account rep. And I mean, my rep, we were eating steaks in Vegas together a year ago at that conference where this got announced. And, at ConnectWise, you write to account manager at connectwise.com. And if you're lucky, somebody writes back to you. And, so I did read this article that you posted. I read the interview. I thought it was really interesting to see what he's saying. And, one part of me is like, hey, this is cool. Maybe ConnectWise is going to learn a thing or two from Continuum about communication with partners, about personal relationship. And then the other part of me is scared that Thoma Bravo is going to just sort of take the ConnectWise methodology and apply it to Continuum to save money. And so it's, really interesting trying to read between the lines of that interview about, how much of this is going to be a growth in the right direction and how much of this is going to be just seeing Continuum save money by being less personal and communicating more like ConnectWise does. And I'm a little, I guess we could say I'm a little bit concerned. I think that the sentiment that what has been done in the last 12 months has caused on a number of private IT forums that I'm on, as well as Reddit, is that people are very unhappy with the changes that they're making and the ways that they're doing them. I mean, I just this morning came off of reading a post before I hopped on this call about one more person saying that ConnectWise is not the type of company I want to be working with. And I think Jeffrey's job here is to try to turn that around. And it's, I think it's anyone's guess right now. I mean, if I was a user of ConnectWise Automate instead of Continuum, I think I'd be pretty upset right now, because the development all seems to be going into Continuum as far as I can see. And, who knows? I would imagine what they're trying to do is bring the strengths of Automate feature-wise into the Continuum platform, because Continuum is really a cloud-native, cloud-first tool in a way that Automate never was. And so those are some of my kind of initial thoughts here on what's going on. I think that feature set, I don't think anyone else out of Datto and SolarWinds, out of those big sort of venture-backed big three, has the outsourcing component down, right? I mean, Continuum has just, I would say all of Continuum's competitors on that front are much smaller and are really just focused on outsourcing, and the Continuum kind of knocks that out the park. And so the thought of ConnectWise getting this all together and really being able to come to market with, the sort of industry leading PSA and sort of, rolling sort of a big RMM into that combines the best two of both worlds and the outsourcing is pretty compelling. It all leads to see, can they keep their partners happy while they're trying to do it? Because it's just like the grumbling is very loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I should say quickly before I forget that when the RMM integration came up in that conversation last week with Willison, his words were almost exactly the words that you used in terms of taking the best parts of both products and kind of bringing them together. He didn't couch it in terms of pulling stuff out of Automate and putting it into the ConnectWise too. It wasn't clear, if there was a winner between these two or whatever, but that idea that we're going to take what people like about both products and combine them is sort of philosophically how they're approaching this.
Well, and let me be clear, I have no info, that I'm not supposed to have otherwise, or that I'm not supposed to talk about. I just read people on Automate saying, hey, there hasn't been a new feature in XYZ amount of time. And I see the development they're doing on the sort of Continuum ConnectWise platform, on that RMM. And so I'm just guessing.
So I remember from prior conversations, I knew from prior conversations that you were a ConnectWise guy. I had forgotten that you were Continuum as well. So, in this conversation with Willison, he was kind of talking about what's happened in the last 11 months in terms of integrating these companies. And I mean, stuff that they, in addition to what they have coming, stuff that they've already accomplished. But you're in an ideal position to kind of see what has changed, from a partner standpoint. I mean, how much integration, how much change has there been from both a ConnectWise or a Continuum standpoint? Have you actually felt any of the momentum that they were kind of talking with me about?
I've felt mostly negative momentum. I mean, I hate to sort of come on record as saying that, but like I've lost two partner reps, one after the other in the last 11 months. I keep watching my LinkedIn for people who used to work at Continuum, starting new jobs at Huntress and Proofpoint. And so what I'm seeing, because I'm a relationship guy, right? I mean, I run a small, lean business, and I've been able to know as much as I do about the industry by getting pretty sort of deeply connected to the companies that I work with. And I mean, ConnectWise was, out of all the tools that I use, that I still use today, ConnectWise was the first one I signed up with. That must have been 2014 or something like that. I've never had a single personal connection at ConnectWise as long as I've been with them, right? And at Continuum, I know the product owners. At Continuum, I know the developers. At Continuum, I know everybody. And, I mean, the biggest change that I've seen personally is that people that I like working with keep walking out the door. I just had my favorite security analyst walk out the door because he got headhunted. And so I keep seeing these personnel changes happening, right? There's nothing that I used to have to do in two panes of glass that have come together into one. I did get the notice about the integrated billing. I think that'll be cool. But again, I'm worried that's going to come more with the faceless ConnectWise side and less with a Continuum side. And so I'm kind of here being negative today. I hate to do that. But all the stuff he's talking about, like, am I able to log into at one place for ConnectWise and Continuum yet? No. Am I able to see my, like Continuum and ConnectWise, if you use their two solutions, your contacts from ConnectWise don't synchronize correctly into Continuum yet. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that I was thinking, wow, maybe they're going to solve that problem 12 months out. And so, what I'm seeing and what I got from that interview is that it's very, very challenging to merge the organizational structures of two giant companies like that. And I think mostly what they've been concerned with so far is how do we use Continuum's great support team to try to support ConnectWise partners better or things like that. And I just think I think mostly what they've had to do so far is sort of invisible and hard to see and comes with the bad publicity that things like layoffs comes with. I think the next 12 months is going to show us how this thing pans out, right? I think because they had to do so much hard work. And I mean, I would never want to be in charge of merging two global organizations like that. And so I think he's been in a very difficult position, right? Jeffrey has had to do a lot of hard things. I don't think anyone likes to lay people off. And I think that in 12 months, if we can, IT Glue just brought in the feature like 2 weeks ago, where if you use Kaseya, you can now manage your tickets inside of IT Glue. And I mean, that's the kind of thing, if I can log into Continuum and I can see the ticket integrated with the device that I'm managing and all that kind of stuff, I think you could really change the way people work. But so far, it's been administrative. And at least from a publicity standpoint, it's been bad. And from a partner standpoint, I've received no benefit yet. So it's a lot of PR right now. And I think they had to get through a lot of angles to integrate the tools together. And that's going to be anyone's guess how they pull that off.
Yeah, I can only imagine the complexity of bringing two gigantic companies together like that, and all the decisions you have to make. And it seems like it's a lot of it is on the backside, but then of course, you end up with so much duplication when you do that, and you have to start figuring out, well, what are you gonna weed out, because you can't keep it all, especially to the really important decisions like which company's coffee maker in the break room are you going to keep, because that's super important.
Right. Well, and which offices are you going to keep open with everyone working from home? I mean, I have a guy who works for me full time through Continuum ConnectWise. He's in Mumbai, India, and I mean, he loved going to the office. And now, ConnectWise has like 600, 700 knock techs working from their house, which is not really how you want that to go, right? You've got SOC analysts and knock people like working out of their house. It's crazy. And I mean, to their credit, there was no disruption whatsoever. This full-time employee of mine had a laptop and a Wi-Fi hotspot, and I think there was like 24 hours of disruption. But I mean, can you imagine not only merging those companies, but then taking business units which are not designed to be at home and have to take them home? It's crazy, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that has contributed to some of the chaos that you've seen and that you've noted with not only dealing with just merging two big companies, but also dealing with the whole COVID pandemic on top of it, just to make things infinitely more complicated than they would have been anyway.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And so, I mean, that was something they pulled off so well, but it's really interesting to think like, what has that done to their, to their security controls process, and what do they have to change, and what do they have to lock down? And I mean, it's not fun. It can't be fun. And
it's not fun. But if anybody's wondering, if you have to choose between two coffee makers, you pick the one that also brews K-cups, because that's important.
No, but they're really bad for the environment, man. But that could be a whole nother discussion that we could have. But yeah, all that said, Rich, I mean, my fingers are crossed that they pull this off. But I mean, I can't tell you the amount of threads that I read about people who are dumping all of it and moving to Synchro. I mean, Synchro seems to be the one who's positioned to take the most business on a sort of simple RMM PSA side for nimble people like myself. I mean, to go from the per endpoint to the per technician model of billing is crazy, right? And I've never even used it, and I don't have the stomach for making that kind of switch, but I read every day about someone else doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, interesting insights there. We're going to move on to the next story, because I think we want to try to get your comments on one or two more if we can. Yep. The next story is a story that we have about Linksys. They've announced a cloud native edition of something. Rich, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, that is the 2.0 version or release of their cloud manager product. So 1.0 came out, just over 2 years ago, September 2018. You know, a lot of the networking companies out there have these cloud management tools now that give you some of that centralized oversight ability over the access points and the switches and the routers and so on that you're managing for your customers. The original version of that tool was it was hosted principally in the cloud, but the interface that you were working with, a lot of that was actually embedded within the hardware. And what they've done now in the 2.0 version is the entire thing is 100% cloud native. You know, and it just allows them, gives them a lot more flexibility to do a number of different things, because you're dealing with space constraints, memory constraints if you're embedding stuff inside the hardware, and updates are an issue, and so on. So the product has gained, it's faster, they're saying, it's more flexible, it's going to be easier for them to update over time. They made some changes. The original version of the product had some zero-touch provisioning functionality in it. They have simplified and streamlined that, so it's a much quicker process to actually add a device to the network right now. Again, zero-touch provisioning isn't something that was invented in the year 2020 by any means, but it has become way more relevant and useful this year, you know, even more so than it was before, because with the Linksys tool, just as a for example, you know, you can kind of scan a barcode in the outside of a box, ship it to the customer plugs it in, and you can pretty much handle the rest of the setup process remotely via that cloud interface. No truck roll, no office visit, none of the concerns that can go along with any of that. The thing about this product that is most interesting to addition to the platform that I at least haven't come across elsewhere. I don't know if there are other products that have this, and I mean other cloud management products, but they've added some functionality to the system that allows you to create a captive portal, as they call it. Basically, if your customer is using Linksys network gear to provide guest Wi-Fi access to visitors, it's a retail business, it's a doctor's office or whatever, they have a guest network that people can log into. You can actually, through this cloud management platform, now create a customized splash screen and a sign-in process, and you can capture some information about who's using the network and so on. And you know, that right there, that's value add for the end user. It's potentially a business opportunity for you as a partner, just in terms of setting that up and managing that. And then as you kind of think about the possibilities, and this is stuff that is down the road, but once you start having that capability to collect user information and to store it and to interact individually with people who connect to the guest network, there are all sorts of opportunities around Wi-Fi based marketing and loyalty programs, and offering somebody who comes back to the store for a second time a coupon or something like that. That's all down the road. They're going to be kind of introducing that sort of functionality a little bit from now, I think. And the captive portal stuff is just a free add-on. It's a new feature to the product. They're not charging anything more for that. Some of this more sophisticated Wi-Fi marketing stuff will come at a cost, apparently, although they don't know how much of a cost. We'll have to see. And I guess just quickly, the last thing to mention, the last sort of significant change from 1.0 to 2.0 is that the 1.0 product came with a 5-year lifespan, basically, and they've essentially made that a lifetime license at this point. You know, so it was free for 5 years when you downloaded it before. It's now free for as long as you're going to use it. The only sort of caveat there being that at some point in time, they will, you know, obsolete this product and they'll stop supporting it. And at that point, you'll have the ability to keep using it for free for another 3 years before it just sort of goes away and isn't supported anymore. But there will be no, you know, it's a unlimited lifetime license to the product for as long as the product exists, plus 3 years, basically.
So, Rich, I think the real story here, and I want to get your comments on this, Josh, but I think the real story here is that Rich has just been taken over by a demon, and we need to to call an exorcist immediately. So for those listening and watching, Rich, you have not picked up on this yet, but
No.
at some point there was a pause, and your voice is now a whole octave lower than what it was
Really?
before. Yeah. And I have Josh sending me chat messages like, his voice has changed, and I'm like, it did. I think he's possessed.
That's pretty cool, Rich.
So
A new tool, a new technology that we could discuss.
so either you have been possessed by a demon, or you have just hit your second stage of puberty. It's one of the two.
And this is still ongoing?
It's still ongoing. So why don't you drop, and I will get Josh's thoughts on the Linksys story, and we'll see if you can go and excise the demon upon your return.
But I just want to check before I go. I mean, do I just have a deep voice? Like, should I be doing an NFL promotion right now or something like that? Or?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and say something like Sunday, come down for the monster truck rally.
A monster truck rally. Sunday.
Oh my gosh! All right, you drop. I will get Josh's thoughts. Josh, tell us what you think here on Linksys's cloud native 2.0 version.
This is what I think. I think everyone needs to have cloud native management like that. And you know how I see it? There's this thing that I'm going to guess everyone here listening can relate to me on this. I'll be working with some big, $500 million cloud vendor and I'm joining their partner program, right? And they send me like a Word doc that I'm supposed to like download, convert to PDF, and then put in my own, DocuSign, Adobe Sign, whatever. And so like, to me, like if you're going to do business in the modern age, send me a DocuSign or don't send me a document to sign. And I see cloud management in the same thing. It's like these days when something cannot be managed from the cloud, when something cannot be onboarded properly, easily, and have cloud management features, like why are you even doing business anymore in the networking space, right? And and I'm someone who's been using Meraki since 2012 or whatever, since Meraki just started. And Meraki really, it made me look at every other vendor, like why don't you do this already? And so I'm really happy, like a blue chip vendor like Linksys getting into that space and having cloud management. And so basically sounds awesome. And everything else that you're saying about the ability to get into the marketing space, that stuff is all fine and dandy, but it's kind of like, if you want to get into using Microsoft Intune, you have to have two-factor authentication turned on so that you can actually have secure accounts that you're managing. And I see it in the same way of seeing every vendor move into this space is really, really exciting. I don't have any personal experience with Linksys. I mean, mostly I've seen Linksys as hey, I need a 5-port unmanaged switch. What should I buy? I'll get a Linksys. And so I think this is a great opportunity for them to really do what is so important and to show that they're keeping up with the times and that they're really kind of executing on that.
Yeah, they've got a good SMB focus, and I know some of the I've gotten a chance to play with several of the access points.
Yeah,
that they make, and they're actually quite nice for SMB. Now, Rich, you're back. Did you excise the spirit within?
You tell me. How do I sound?
You're back to normal. You're gonna laugh when you actually hear this.
I can't wait.
Put it out. It's gonna go down as one of my favorite moments. So Rich, we talked a lot about it, about the first iteration of this when they put it out, and I know we had, I believe, Joshua Lieberman on to discuss that with us, and it was very rough around the edges to start, but it looks like they've really taken this in a direction that a lot of channel pros and MSPs are going to like. What do you think?
Yeah, well, and I as I was eliminating the demons, I missed some of Josh's comments there, but I caught up on the the tail end of it. And yeah, I think for exactly the reason that he was citing, that the more cloud first anything is these days, I would think the better. And not having the 5-year deadline kind of looming over you potentially has got to be useful. And I just think it's sort of interesting to see them working functionality that you don't typically find into a management platform in there that could actually generate some incremental revenue for you.
Yeah, I was going to make a quick comment that that was one of the big issues with that 1.0 version was that they had that 5-year license, and then now it's lifetime plus 3 years, which makes a big difference. But I do believe we've kind of hit the end of Josh's time with us. I know he's got to run. Josh, I want to say thank you so much for being on with us here today, and hopefully we'll get you back on and you can be on with us a little bit longer on a future show. But for those who want to connect with you and learn a little bit more about your company, where can they go?
LinkedIn, LA Creative Technologies, or Josh at lacreativetech.com.
Awesome. And we'll get that in the show notes, and we'll have people people reach out to you if they need to, and that way they can go and they can learn about you. So thank you so much for being on. Hope you had a good time.
A chance to chat about ConnectWise Continuum. I always love to do that, and it's good to see you guys. Take care.
Great. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Great to see you, Josh.
All right, now it's just the three of us here, you, me, and that evil spirit within.
And I swear to you people, I did not scare him off the show. We knew he had a time limit, but I can only imagine. So, like, how much of my little spiel on Linksys was in the demon voice?
Almost all of it, and it was great. I almost didn't want to tell you and just have you finish out the rest of the show that way, but it was so good, Rich. Oh, it was so good. This episode will go down in history as one of the greatest. So I don't know if there's a whole lot else to cover here. I know the licensing thing was a big deal, and it was a big turnoff for a lot of people who were looking at this. But I think they've solved that, and it looks like that they've fixed up a lot of the issue areas that they had. So hopefully they see a lot more uptake in their cloud manager platform.
Yeah, well, and they, like I said, it's been about 2 years from version 1.0 to version 2.0, but just in speaking with them, they have more stuff coming within the next few months even. So I think there will be more a steadier sort of upgrade stream coming along down the road. So there will be probably more to talk about with this platform going forward.
Very cool. We'll keep an eye on that, and we're gonna go ahead and shift gears. We've got a couple other news stories to talk about. These are hardware related ones because Lenovo is in the news. They've unveiled a whole bunch of new hardware. Rich, which one do you want to start with? The First Foldable PC.
Let's go there. Yeah. And quite honestly, I always look forward to the opportunity to bring these stories to the show, mostly to see what you say. So I will set things up in terms of what strikes me as interesting here, but I'm very curious to get your opinion, especially about these two products. And so the two products, Lenovo announced a whole bunch of new products last week. And included among them were additions to the ThinkPad line that they call the X1 Fold and the X1 Nano. Now, the X1 Nano is one that's actually kind of interesting to me personally, but it's also maybe the less sort of surprising and interesting of the two. So let's start with the X1 Fold. The X1 Fold is basically think of it as a very thin display, like a very thin display panel from a laptop that you can use in that sort of slate mode it's foldable. That's why they got fold in the title. So you can hold it like a book and fold it closed that way. You can put it into tent mode. You can, there's a digital keyboard, but you can also via a Bluetooth keyboard, use it as a conventional laptop with that keyboard and the stylus and so on. The folks at Lenovo make a point of sort of emphasizing this invents a new category. You can't really liken it to anything else out there. And they are also first to admit, basically, it's a bit of a proof of concept kind of product that they've introduced. It is a real product. It's not something that they're just going to ship 100 of just for the heck of it to show that they can do it and so on. But they themselves are sort of, I think, waiting to see where does this go? How does it evolve? And there are a lot of question marks around that themselves. The other product is a new X1 ThinkPad, the X1 Nano, as I mentioned before. And it's interesting to me personally because, in normal times, I do a lot of traveling. And so as I said before in the podcast, the three things I always look for in a laptop are, and in no particular order, but are weight, battery life, and durability, low weight particularly. Well, the X1 Nano is a 1.99 pound laptop, 13.3 inch, or I guess 13 inch, strictly speaking, laptop that weighs in just slightly below 2 pounds. It's a Lenovo, so I'm not going to worry too much about the durability issue. And it's on 11th gen, the newest Intel processor. So I don't know what their projected battery life is off the top of my head, but it's probably pretty good. So that's one that I'm going to be taking a look at down the road to you know, when it comes time for a new laptop. That's one that I think I'm going to be looking at. And another quick thing I'll point out about that product, because this is going to come up again, if I remember right, with some of the Think books that they introduced, is the display on the X1 Nano. It has a 16:10 aspect ratio. And like I said, there are some other Lenovo products that have that, and basically allows you to pack a display that's the same height as a 14-inch model might have in a 13-inch unit or chassis. So I at least have not seen 16:10 products around before, but it's something that Lenovo, I guess, is going to be trying to popularize or make more use of.
Yeah, we're seeing that ratio a lot more, especially as they try to maximize the amount of screen that's on a laptop in the smallest chassis. It's what we saw LG do in that Gram for Business laptop, and we're starting to see Dell do a couple of those at that ratio. I'm not sure where to begin here. There's a couple of things. I guess we'll talk about the X1 Fold, and I actually got a chance to see a very, very early kind of, I don't think it was a working prototype of this, but I knew it was something that they were working on. And we're seeing other companies kind of come out with this kind of foldable design. Microsoft has got their foldable kind of tablet thing that they're working on. I think Lenovo's being realistic that they don't know what the uptake is going to be on this, and I actually don't think it's going to be very good for a couple of reasons. One, it's really expensive. It's not a productivity device, because there's just, if you try to, and because it's not a good productivity device, it's too expensive, right? If I think this foldable format is going to be great for consumption. It's going to be great for ebooks. It's going to be great for things where you don't have to do a lot of typing, and you want it to be compact. But but as they said, you can put it like a conventional laptop, and I'm willing to bet there's a mode on there that changes like the bottom screen into like an on-screen keyboard, but that's an awful experience. So I don't think it's going to be a massive seller, but it will be interesting to see if this kind of design finds a home in certain niche use cases, but I don't see it being a mainstream thing. My opinion. Rich, what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you alluded to the Microsoft product there, and Samsung has. So this is not the first foldable piece of hardware on the market, but it is I think the biggest foldable piece of hardware, at least that I've seen. There have been phones, and I'm blanking on the name of that Surface product from Microsoft, but that you know, arguably fits into the phablet you know, category. It's a little bit bigger than a conventional phone, but certainly not anything from a size standpoint that you would compare to a laptop. So the X1 Fold is a 13-inch device. It is the size of a laptop with that folding functionality. And I do think, you know, you make a good point that the question is, and Lenovo is asking this question too, is there a use case for a folding device that big? Because we have been presented with use cases for the smaller devices, and I don't know the sales figures. You know, and the Microsoft thing we're still really kind of waiting on. But like, you know, Samsung has had a foldable product on the market for a while. I don't know how well it's been selling or not, but you can sort of imagine, you know, in your daily life, some ways that might be handy. It is a little harder to know. Well, what would a 13-inch foldable device enable me to do that I do a lot of and that I can't do today with a conventional laptop? I'm not sure what that is yet. And I guess the question is, will once that kind of product becomes available, do people begin to figure that out? That, oh wait, here's something I never even realized I could potentially do, and they start inventing use cases for something like this. It's a different kind of step in the evolution of foldable devices, and it's an open question where it goes, if it goes anywhere.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm trying to look here on this fold device is it's 13.3 inches, but is it 13 inches unfolded completely, or is
I believe so. I believe,
so?
yeah.
So you got to divide that into. So that's pretty small if you try to use it as a laptop. I also do see that they put it. They have a magnetically attachable Bluetooth keyboard. That might make it a little bit more interesting from a productivity standpoint, but then you're really chopping the screen real estate down. I'm not sold on it personally, but it'll be interesting to see it where if it finds a niche in certain uses or in certain types of jobs. But I don't know where those are going at the moment. And I love new form factors. I love new technology. I just don't. For so long they've wanted to make things with bendable foldable screens, and I definitely think in some devices, small phones and stuff like that, it's a great way to get a lot more screen real estate in a compact package. But I'm not seeing it as a laptop replacement. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And again, unless there's some sort of niche category of laptop user that is going to be better served by something that's like you were saying, more focused around consumption than production. You're not a heavy typer or whatever, but you do need something bigger than a phone that's also very portable and so on. There might be users out there who would really see the benefit in this form factor, but yeah, I don't know how mainstream it's going to end up being.
Yeah. Now, one thing I would like, so Lenovo, if you're listening, you got the foldable thing down, right? You can make a 13-inch screen fold. Take out all of the guts, the process. Let's not make it a productivity device. Let's make a 13-inch foldable portable monitor that you can carry with your existing ThinkPad. Unfold it, set it out, because they have portable screens, but they don't fold, so they're a little bit bulkier to take. You do that. That is a hit, but it can't be $1,000 though. You gotta get that cost down. But that is something I think that would be a really cool product that I would buy. I want a foldable monitor that's portable. Because Rich, when you go somewhere and you set up and you're used to two screens, you got to have two screens. You know what I mean?
And like you said, there are products out there. I know people who travel around with the second screen that you can plug in USB to the laptop and so on. But yeah, it doesn't fold. The thought of something that folds and the exterior becomes the case, so you're not going to scratch the screen. That's nice.
Moneymaker idea there, Lenovo. Get on it. All right. So the other one was the X1 Nano. What does it say about this? I mean, it's a smaller, lighter ThinkPad. It's gonna be a hit. 1.99 pounds. Large size screen. Again, a 13-inch 1610 screen is going to look bigger than like what you would imagine a 13-inch screen looks like. So you get lots of screen real estate. Super lightweight. I bet the battery life will be 10 plus hours. That was my one concern. Is like, well, if you're gonna chop that much weight off of it, you're gonna sacrifice some battery, because that's where a lot of the weight is in laptops these days. But I imagine that it'll be with the way the 10th gen Intel processors are, it'll get 10, if not 12 hours of battery life, I'm sure. I think this one's going to be a big hit.
Really? I mean, I'm sure if we were to dive into it, we might find other examples. I mean, the only thing that I know you're kind of giving up if you're comparing this to the X1 Carbon is ports. And there's like a dongle device that they have for this that's credit card sized and so on to kind of compensate for some of that. But yeah, and for people who prize mobility, it's a pretty attractive combination of features that you get with this one.
Yeah, I think these days everyone's used to the reduction of ports. I mean, some power users still like larger laptops with lots of ports, but for those who are looking for the ultra portable, if you're going that route, you're already going in knowing you're sacrificing ports. But the nice thing is that with the way Thunderbolt works, is that you can carry one little tiny doohickey, and I even have one here for my yoga that's got all kinds of stuff on it. So you're really only carrying one dongle, not 17 anymore. So here, I'll even pull it off. So like this, I carry with my yoga. And this gives me, most of the time I don't need it, but if I do need the additional USB ports or whatever, this gives me my, extra USB ports. It gives me wired Ethernet, and it gives me HDMI and a card reader if I need it. Like that's not that hard to carry around, and that makes a big difference. So that's what I'm thinking. I think that one's gonna be a good one. All right, let's move on to the next one, because there's ThinkBooks, and I think for our listeners who sell in SMB a lot, I think the ThinkBook line has been a huge success and of great interest to our listeners and viewers. So, Rich, tell us what's new in the ThinkBook family.
Yeah, so for folks who are maybe new to that name, ThinkBook is an entirely new addition to the Think family. The servers and appliances, and of course ThinkPads, which were the original Think branded laptops. Gosh, was it just last year? I think it was last year. Lenovo introduced this whole new line of ThinkBooks, which are specifically targeted at the SMB, and we in fact gave them one of our much coveted All-Star Awards last year for the introduction of the ThinkBook line, which combines very affordable pricing with style in these sort of compact, lightweight products that are a great fit for an SMB because they are affordably priced and have good, solid kind of functionality without getting you, the kind of power and such that you would get with an X1 Carbon, for example. When the first ThinkBooks came out, if I'm not mistaken, there were 3 of them. And really what's significant about what they announced last week is they've added 6 new models to the line. So they've really kind of rounded out the ThinkBook family. It was there were 13 inches, 14 inches, 15-inch models introduced there. They have their first, I believe, ThinkBook Yoga product. So the first ThinkBook with a fold back 2-in-1 kind of screen. They've got AMD processors now, in addition to Intel processors for you to choose from. The price points remain very reasonable. So just a dramatic expansion of the ThinkBook line with a lot more options for people, with varying needs. And then I guess quickly, just the other thing to mention that I was announced by Lenovo last week. I happen to include it in this article too, even though it isn't specifically about the ThinkBooks, is there was also a new display, a new monitor that Lenovo came out with. In addition to their Think Vision line. And it's a 27-inch unit. It's got an integrated 1080p camera, integrated speakers, noise canceling microphones. So this sort of harkens back to something we spoke about very recently on the podcast. There was an HP product that came out that was really kind of designed, top to bottom for that video conferencing kind of scenario. And again, when the design work started on the HP product or this new Lenovo product, nobody realized how big a deal video conferencing was going to be in everyone's life. But, we were saying just weeks ago, you're going to see more products like this coming out. Here already is another example of that kind of trend, and there are many more, I'm sure, to come. A display that is great for office use, but also now happens to be a terrific fit for work from home people as well, who need something that's just going to be really easy to use on all those Teams and Zoom meetings that we're all doing these days.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot more emphasis on new models on the conferencing capabilities in the cameras, the mic setups, and this one is definitely no different. The ThinkBook line, I'm glad to see them fleshing it out a little bit more. One of the things that I liked about the ThinkBook line is that it was very clear, and that's going away a little bit, but it was very clear, you know, it was very simple. There was like 2 or 3 models. They weren't customizable. They were what they were, but they were very well designed. They had the right stuff in them, and they were attractive, which is one of the primary reasons uh, employees kind of might have formerly complained about ThinkPads, because they were black or whatever, and they weren't, you know, they were very industrial and very heavy duty, but they didn't have that kind of pizzazz that like younger employees might really like. So they solved that, and the new ones, this abyss blue color looks beautiful. Rich, have you seen the color? It looks really nice.
Yeah, you know, they made a point of emphasizing that it's a little hard for me to make out, you know, just what that looks like. But yeah, you know, and again, that goes to the design aspect of the ThinkBook line. That, you know, even though you're not paying, you're, you know, paying less than $1,000 for the most part for these products, they still kind of look cool.
They do look nice. We're seeing there's a lot more models now, so you know, you're gonna have to pick through, and hopefully the models make sense with the variations. I also want to point out, for those who had noticed, that the ThinkBook line was lacking an option with a dedicated GPU, which is problematic for some types of employees. They do have a dedicated GPU in one of these ThinkBooks now, the 15P, which has an NVIDIA 1650 Ti in it, and Pantone certified display. So for those who kind of weren't looking at ThinkBooks because they didn't have the stuff for, you know, Premiere Pro and, you know, things where you need dedicated GPU, those types of creative uses, they do have a model in here now that works with that. And I didn't see a picture of the monitor, but it sounds nice. You know, it's cool. It's cool to see that we're seeing more just monitors being sold, kind of with all of the stuff built in to do conferencing at a desktop. Like, that's really nice, because I found here, especially with the kids doing remote learning, that has been a royal pain in the butt. That, you know, like you try to set them up on another screen, so that way if they got bigger screens and they can do their schoolwork, but then like they still have to have that little tiny thing and the laptop open and it's off to the side, and it's not very good. Where if it's in the monitor, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think we, in fact, we almost certainly did not talk about this on the last podcast episode that we did. But I attended a virtual event by D&H within the last couple of weeks or so, and one of the sessions included a speaker from Logitech. And you know, they've made enormous strides in catching up with the demand for webcams and microphones and so on over there. But I mean, you know, this guy was the first to say it's going to be early next year before we're really kind of caught up. Supply has caught up with demand. And so, you know, accessorizing a display for video conferencing, it's been hard this year. It's going to be hard for at least another few months. And yeah, just one SKU, one product you can buy that just has the accessories sort of attached, built in, is a handy thing right now.
Sure is. Yeah, but the ThinkBook line, I think, is a great product line. It's been super successful. I know even here at ChannelPro, we've ended up with I think 2, and I think we just ordered a third for another employee. So they're nice. They're nice. They're reasonably priced. They're pretty high quality. They're not quite as durable as the ThinkPads, but they're still really, really good, and they're spec'd out well. Can't go wrong. That's a trifecta of things for winning.
Agreed.
Indeed. All right. Well, that is it for the news, but we are going to switch gears for a moment and talk about our second, which is, we can now say second annual, because this will be the second one. So not the first, but the second annual Peer of the Year award. We are taking nominations. Is that true?
Yeah, and I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity here to bring that up. Now, this is our second annual Peer of the Year award. Earlier this year, in January, we announced our first ever Peer of the Year winner, Joanna Sabrin. She was on the show with us, in fact, back in January. So since the very beginning of ChannelPro, one of the regular features in our monthly magazine has been the column that we call Peer to Peer, which is where your peers in the industry, other MSPs and VARs like you, share best practices, experiences, thoughts, ideas that can help you grow your own business based on their experience. And so last year we introduced this competition basically to choose, the best peer-to-peer story of the prior 12 months. Who's the person basically who has the most widely applicable, highest impact kind of insight to share with our readers. And it was an idea that kind of came along late-ish in the year before in 2019. And so what we did in that first year basically is just take the prior year's worth of peer-to-peer columns from the magazine, and you and me and Colleen Fry, our managing editor, we sat down, we looked at all 12, and we picked Joanna's as the one that we thought of these 12 great stories was particularly special. And she became our first ever peer of the year. But we knew even back then that what we kind of wanted to do was just open this up to the world to say, hey, tell us about people and stories that we don't know about, but should and are worth an award. And so we are taking nominations this year. We will include a link to this. There's a little article about this up on the ChannelPro website right now. There's a link to a nomination page you can go to. If you or somebody really sort of sets an example for other people in the industry in terms of something really smart that they do about how they manage people, how they work with customers, how they package and price and sell products. If you know of a trailblazer out there, or somebody who's just a thought leader in the industry as an MSP or a VAR who should be recognized as our peer of the year, please go ahead and nominate that person. And a few months from now, once again, the editorial team at ChannelPro is going to get together, and we're going to look at all those nominations, and we're going to pick our peer of the year for next year.
Yeah, awesome that we're taking nominations. It's great. We're opening it up. I know that was a long series of phone calls to pick the first winner of the Peer of the Year awards. What, Rich? I'm not lying when I say this, and Rich will back me up. We take all of those kinds of decisions where we have to make an editorial decision very seriously, and some of those discussions are quite heated on occasion.
Well, I would certainly say everybody comes to the discussion with opinions. So yeah. So these can be very opinionated kinds of exchanges, and yeah. But we do reach consensus. You don't win with 2 out of 3 votes. The winner gets all 3.
Yep, and there's that one guy whose name starts with an M that always makes things way more difficult than they need to be. Can you believe it, folks, that Rich has to put up with me, not only here on the show, but all day, every day?
It apparently alters my voice.
It sure does. It sure does. Good. So Rich, we're going to put a link to the nomination form in the show notes page. Please, folks, if you have a peer that you want to nominate, what are some of the criterias for nomination? Like who should they nominate, Rich?
You know what? If you give me just a moment here, and I can get to that nomination form. Gosh, where's the link to that? Because I wanted to actually read what it says in the form, and I'm just not seeing it. I'll have to fix that, make it a little bit more obvious here.
I don't know, Rich. This is where did they hide it?
Yeah, exactly. That might have. I could swear it was in there when I was reviewing this before, so it may have dropped out somewhere in the publishing process. But I'm going to fix that before people are even listening to this podcast tomorrow, or later than that. But I'm just looking at the article here now, which is based on the nomination form. We're looking for stories that are designed to provide actionable advice. So it's great to be a terrific colleague and someone who you can talk to and share ideas with. But we're looking for somebody who has a specific idea, actionable advice on topics that can range from growing the business, improving operations, improving service delivery, adding a new line of business, hiring and retention, sales and marketing, a corporate, culture, creating a business culture that enables your employees to thrive and keeps them on board for a long time, et cetera. So what we want to be able to do when we hand out this award is not only recognize somebody who deserves recognition for the great work that they've done with their company, but also share a kind of specific best practice that person is responsible for, that we feel other people can take advantage of too.
Excellent. Good. So if you know any of those folks, go to the nomination form, go to the show notes page, or episode 162, where Rich will find where the form is, because it appears to be missing, and he will add it there for your convenience. I'm sure it'll probably also find its way to the homepage at some point, maybe. But look around, you will find it, of course. So Rich, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we've got an amazing interview that we recorded it earlier due to timing reasons, but it's a phenomenal interview with David Friend, President and CEO of Wasabi Technologies. Amazing. Just watch it through the end, folks. It's just what an interesting guy and what an amazing interview. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. We've got a great guest interview lined up for you today. And where our next guest goes, success seems to follow. He's founded and co-founded numerous technology companies in the past, like Pilot Software, FaxNet, Synexis, and I'm sure you've heard of his the one previous to his current company called Carbonite. In 2015, he founded Wasabi Technologies, which is on a mission to commoditize storage and make it a utility like electricity. Please welcome the president and CEO of Wasabi Technologies, David Friend. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on. Reading through your history of founding companies, you've not only subjected yourself to that feat once, but many times, it seems, over your career. What is your well, first tell us a little bit about you and kind of your background on how you got to be such an entrepreneur.
Sure. I was a music composition major in college. And when I got out of college and looked around at the prospects for making a living as a composer, that didn't look too good. So I went back to grad school in engineering and got a degree in electrical engineering. I started my first company really when I was still in school. And that was a company called ARP that made synthesizers for rock bands. That was a lot of fun when I was in my 20s. I could get to hang out with The Who and Stevie Wonder and Led Zeppelin and all the great bands of that era. And the synthesizers we made back then are still being produced and very popular with bands all over the place. But then, that industry is for people in their 20s. And when I got a little older, we sold that company and got into the software business, and have been doing that ever since. So Wasabi is my 6th company since getting out of college.
That is incredible. Now you formerly were at Carbonite, was your company before that, and sold that off. And then now Carbonite was kind of a backup and storage company, but now you're kind of going still that route into storage. What's different about Wasabi that you want to take it that Carbonite didn't go?
So, backup is obviously requires storage behind it. So a lot of backup companies like Veeam, for example, which is, a very successful company in the channel, don't offer their own storage. They offer the software that determines how to back stuff up, what to back up, where to back it up, and all that kind of thing, which can get very complicated because there's a lot of different operating systems and environments in which it has to work. But underneath that, there's a layer of storage. And, and Veeam is agnostic about that. We are partnered with Veeam, and we love doing business with Veeam. We're doing webinars with them practically every week because we can use their backup software with our storage. But at Carbonite, we combined the storage with the backup software because we wanted a very simple product that was easily understood by small businesses and consumers. And we had millions of customers, and we had hundreds of petabytes of storage. And we drove a lot of much larger incumbents out of the business by being very good at marketing and having a product that was an exceptional value. So we got really good at being at cloud storage technology. And I have a longtime technical partner who's been with me since the 1980s, if you can believe it, through all of these different companies. And, he had this idea for a new storage architecture that was just cheaper and faster than what was on the market. And so that he came to me one day when I was still CEO of Carbonite and said he wanted to see if he could make this new architecture work. And I said, great, go off and do it. And a year later, he came back and said, we've got it working. We should start a company. So I recruited a new CEO for Carbonite and went over and founded Wasabi. And we launched in 2017, May of 2017. It took us 5 months to sell our first petabyte of storage. We sold a petabyte of storage yesterday, and we'll probably sell another one tomorrow. And so, we've seen enormous growth. We have over 19,000 customers today. We have about 3,300 channel partners who are all discovering that you can make money by selling cloud storage instead of selling hardware storage or whatever else they used to sell. So we're on a mission to basically, be to cloud storage what a company like Iron Mountain is to physical storage. If you got a box of papers to store somewhere, you see that Iron Mountain truck going around, you call Iron Mountain. If you've got some data to store it with Wasabi, because our brand stands for always fast, always reliable, and always the cheapest. So there's no point in shopping around because that's where we're always going to be.
And so, the fast and cheap part of that in particular were really core to the messaging at the company from the beginning. And I mean, that's honestly what attracted our attention to the company a few years ago at ChannelPro. You guys were on it. We do this vendors on the Vanguard list every year where we kind of call attention to companies people may not have heard of, but probably should know about. You guys made that list one year in part because of how fast and cheap the storage is. So, I mean, just give folks a sense from your perspective, how the speed, how the cost of Wasabi storage in the cloud compares to AWS or whatever else you want to use as a comparison point.
Sure. Well, Amazon AWS is about $23 per terabyte per month, and they charge about $5 per terabyte egress fees, or $50, sorry, egress fees to take data out. We charge $6 per terabyte per month for storage. So it's, almost 1/5 the price. And we don't charge for anything extra. So there's no egress fees, there's no API calls and so forth. And, when Jeff was building the product, I was out talking to customers. And one of the things I heard right away was, these Amazon bills drive me crazy because I know how much storage I have, but I have no idea what my egress is. I have no idea how often I touch my data and so forth. And they get their first Amazon bill and it's 2 or 3x what they thought it was going to be. And, and it's unpredictable. Nobody likes to be the guy that has to go down to the CFO's office and explain why you're, 100% over budget on your cloud storage costs. So we decided to eat the egress costs and all those other things and just have a one single line item on our bill, and that's how much data you're storing. And that's been very popular with our customers. I mean, people love the fact that that the bill is going to be completely predictable, in addition to being 1/5 the price. So, yeah.
And and that gets to the cost issue, but the speed issue is really interesting too. And I mean, you guys refer to what you sell sometimes as hot cloud storage. I mean, people think of cloud storage traditionally as archiving and so on. You guys actually accommodate some more active workloads in the cloud because of the architecture, because of the speed that you guys feel like you can deliver. So I mean, what kinds of speeds can you deliver, and what kinds of workloads can you handle maybe in the cloud that people might not think of as cloud appropriate otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, we provide millisecond response time to data queries. So clearly you can use Wasabi for pretty much any kind of storage. The sweet spot for us are things where people are going to move data in and leave it for a while. We like that business best because we provide free egress. If somebody puts data into Wasabi and then deleted it 2 seconds later, we'd be paying for all the egress costs, but without getting any revenue for the storage. So, you know, we've set ourselves up to look for things like backups, any kind of data that's going to be retained for, you know, 30 days or more is typically kind of our sweet spot. So, you know, we have people who are using Wasabi for archiving kinds of things because we're in the same price range as cold storage like Amazon Glacier, where you might have to wait a whole day to get your data back, whereas, you know, Wasabi is milliseconds. But we also are used for lots of live applications. So for example, a lot of the people in the media industry and the entertainment industry use Wasabi as the origin server for content delivery networks. So let's say you're, you know, you're one of these many cable channels that provides movies on demand. Those movies would be stored in Wasabi. And when somebody around the other side of the world clicks the button, says, I want to watch that movie movie will be served up instantly off of Wasabi into the CDN and then transferred to the edge of the network via the CDN. So those are very live applications. Other ones are things like, you know, hospitals are storing millions of X-rays and MRIs and things like that in Wasabi. If a doctor wants to look at your chest X-ray from 5 years ago, clicks the button and up it comes. You know, so that's an example of a live application. We have data from, you know, a telescope in Chile that does a survey of the night sky every night, and all that data gets accumulated into Wasabi. And if a scientist in Germany wants to take a look at a particular image, you know, clicks the button and bang, up it comes. So, you know, it's a mixture of things that I call very hot kind of data and data that's just being put away for backups or archival purposes and things of that sort.
Now, you alluded to this before, but because of the cost structure, because of the speed with some of those workloads you just described in mind, there is actually an opportunity to make more money around storage for partners. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit. Where is the opportunity for our readers in the hot storage that you guys deliver?
So, you know, if you're selling any kind of application that that requires storage, backup would be a good one, for example. If you're a Veeam reseller or you're a Comprise reseller or you're, you know, pretty much any of the 300 or so partners that we have, you can sell a bundle of Wasabi storage with whatever that other piece of software that you have. And there are margins in there. We've built good margins into the product so that you can make more money selling 100 terabytes of Wasabi cloud storage than you can selling a 100 terabyte, let's say, EMC or NetApp storage server. You know, the hardware world is so over distributed now that, you know, most resellers make maybe 10 or 12% on hardware. And, you know, without giving specific numbers, you can make significantly larger margins than that by selling Wasabi. So we made a big bet on the channel a couple of years ago. You know, a lot of people, a lot of pundits were speculating that the channel was going to go away because companies like Amazon do their best to disintermediate the channel. And, you know, you hear reports all the time about channel partners working on a big deal, and at the last minute, you know, some Amazon salesman comes in and scoops the deal direct. We don't do that, and we provide financial incentives so that channel partners would prefer to sell Wasabi storage than any other kind of storage.
And I mean, really, as I understand it, if people just charge their customers the sort of going market rate for storage, what everyone else is kind of charging customers, because they're paying that much less for the storage, their margins kind of explode immediately.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we have heard back from our channel partners that cloud storage is a great product for the channel. It's everybody needs some amount of storage. So every single one of the channel partners' customers is a prospect for Wasabi, some big, some small, you know. Some might need petabytes of storage, some might need 1 terabyte, you know, for a backup or something. And it's easy to learn. You know, there's a standard industry S3 API on Wasabi that connects up to hundreds of different software products. And if you know what Amazon S3 is, you know what Wasabi is. The amount of training that it takes to sell Wasabi is minimal. And if you want to know what's on the battle card, the battle card says faster than Amazon and 1/5 the price. It's a pretty simple story. So that's why we've built up, you know, over the course of less than 2 years, 3,300 channel partners, about 95% of whom have already sold some cloud storage, and we're signing up additional ones at a rate of probably 200 a month right now.
Now, you know, we've talked a little bit about Amazon here. They're obviously the big fish in the public cloud pond. But I mean, you know, Microsoft, Google, there are other big public cloud players out there. I know one of the things that you are interested in and kind of talk to channel partners about is what you guys call micro cloud providers, smaller cloud providers that maybe partners should be working with more often. So, I mean, maybe just as a starting point, how would you define a micro cloud provider?
Well, you know, right now, you know, a lot of people think the entire cloud consists of Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. And, you know, some people might throw in IBM and Oracle, but they're small players, relatively speaking. I don't think that's the way the cloud is going to look 5 or 10 years from now. You know, I remember when I was in college, if you walked into a data center, virtually every piece of gear in the data center had an IBM logo on it. And today, if you walk into a data center, you're going to see dozens of different manufacturers' gear all working together based on standards. So you'll have people, one manufacturer will make the router, somebody else makes the top of rack switch, somebody else going to make the storage server, somebody else going to make the CPUs, and so forth. And I think that's the way you're going to see the cloud go as well. So we partner up with people like DigitalOcean and StackPath and many other people who have taken a specific part of the cloud, like content delivery network or just raw compute in the cloud. And we've partnered with them and said, they're going to do their part better than Amazon. We're going to do our part better than Amazon. And, you know, no matter how big you are, even if you're a Microsoft or Amazon, you can't be best at everything. There's always going to be somebody like us come along and says, you know what, we can do storage better than any of these guys. We've been at it a lot longer. We know more about it. And we only do that. We put 100% of our attention on being the best cloud storage vendor in the marketplace. There are other companies out there that are doing the same thing for compute, doing things for AI, facial recognition, voice recognition, deep learning, you know, hot supercomputing type of capabilities in the cloud and so forth. And I think what we're going to see is this rich array of vendors doing really great stuff in specific areas. And it's going to be the channel partners who are going to be able to integrate all that together for the customer. So that's why we bet on the channel, because we don't think that a big marketplace like cloud is going to be dominated by a couple of big vendors that do it all. It's just too complex for that. And so we've bet on the emergence of companies like Wasabi that have picked off specific things that are innovative, and they're going to do a better job at those than any of the hyperscalers can do. So that's what's happening, and that's the bet that we've placed in the marketplace.
So sometimes in the industry, that kind of a strategy or approach is referred to as a best of breed sort of strategy, that you find the best product in each category, you pull those together. So I mean, from a channel partner standpoint, from an end user standpoint, what are maybe the advantages to going best of breed, and what are potentially the disadvantages? I mean, you know, a lot of people are attracted to the AWSs and Microsoft Azures because of the the simplicity of getting everything from one source. What are the pros and cons basically of that kind of best of breed approach?
So, clearly, if you look at the hardware world, which, has developed over the last 40 years, you see analogies there. You see companies like NetApp and EMC that grew to dominate the hardware storage markets. You see other companies that have grown to dominate the CPU markets. You've seen companies like Cisco and all the other networking companies that have grown to be best at networking gear and so forth. And I think, what will happen with the cloud is you'll have a similar kind of evolution where you'll have companies like Wasabi that do a really great job of storage and others that do other jobs, like StackPath does a really great job at content delivery. I think for the channel, you've got an opportunity here to add some value by being able to help the customer pick what's right for them. And in the end, clearly what you're going to have is a solution that is more cost effective and higher performance for the customer. Now, the reason developers like things like Amazon and so forth, they've got this walled garden, and they also run a lot of other people's applications, but they do what they've always done, which is if somebody's running an application in EC2 or any of Amazon's cloud compute services, and Amazon sees that application is starting to get to be really successful, guess what? The next thing you know is they've got their own product coming out to compete with them. And this happens over and over again. And we know a lot of the companies that have been hit with that. But it's a nice, convenient environment. If I were a developer and I needed a wide range of cloud services, including storage, compute, AI stuff, and so forth and so on, I'd be tempted to develop my application in Amazon's cloud too, because it's nice. But it's a walled garden, and they make their money by locking you into their closed environment. They want everything. They don't want somebody to do their compute in Amazon and their storage in Wasabi. They're going to put on egress fees so that you have to pay through the nose to get your data out of Amazon's walled garden. And that's the way all the hyperscalers are. They're all trying to, their message is, don't give me your storage, give me everything. I want 100% of what you've got. You don't need to be in the IT business anymore. Close your data center and do everything in our cloud. And, I think that's okay right now, but I think in the long run, that's not the way the market's going to evolve, because customers are going to demand access to the innovative products that are coming along from other vendors, from the dozens of other companies that are like Wasabi out there.
So, I mean, purely from a channel perspective, it clearly sounds like you sort of feel like it's dangerous in some ways for a partner to place a big bet on one of the big hyperscale public cloud providers. That, they, from a partnering point of view, they're not necessarily the best or the most reliable partner.
They don't need the channel. And, the history has shown that, when they get a chance to take margin away from the channel and bring it back to the mothership, they're going to do that.
Yeah. Wow. I want to touch on something that you talked about a little bit earlier about growth. And one of the things that struck me when you were talking about just the growth of Wasabi and the interest that's out there, that it took so many months, what'd you say, 18 months to sell a petabyte?
Well, it took 5 months to sell our first petabyte of storage.
5 months, but you sold a petabyte just yesterday, right? So like,
we'll sell another one today. Yeah.
So you're selling petabytes of storage a day, and I imagine that you operate all of your own infrastructure.
That's right.
For that. So, do you personally like to go down and take the truckloads of hard drives and stick them into the sand yourself as something fun to do? How many truckloads of hard drives do you guys get a day?
I don't know. I don't have, I love hardware, and I used to love designing hardware. And when I was a kid, I was a ham radio operator, and I liked building transmitters and receivers and power supplies. but they won't let me go near that stuff. I don't even have a pass key to get into our data centers.
They lock you out of the data center. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
I'm too unreliable.
That's so funny. T- Talk about, if you can for a minute, what you see, the opportunity, not necessarily for channel partners, but for even just for Wasabi, that storage provides, because we're in this era now where data retention is like the thing, right? Like you don't delete anything. So it seems like there's a great opportunity for your partners, but also for you to be in a business where growth is almost guaranteed. And if you're billing by the storage that you're using, you're always going to be using more. Is that right?
Yeah, in fact, we do this analysis once a quarter where we look at the cohorts from, a year ago and 2 years ago. And the average Wasabi cohort is growing almost 70% year over year. So if we never sold one more customer, Wasabi would be growing 50 to 70% year over year.
That is an incredible number.
And you can see that with our channel partners too, because every channel partner we have is going up. And even if they don't sign up any new customers, every one of their existing customers uses more and more data. And when you think about it, it's easy to see why. I mean, just look at a field like surveillance, for example, where we're starting to get a fair amount of business. If somebody goes through and replaces all the HD cameras with 4K cameras, all of a sudden you've got 4 times as much data to store. If they decide they want to leave the environment open for 12 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day, you're going to get a third more data. If they decide they want to keep the tapes for 90 days instead of 30 days, you get 3x the amount of data. And now with 5G coming on board, we're going to have 1,000 times the amount of bandwidth that we used to have in the mobile network. And nature abhors a vacuum. Dude, somebody's going to figure out ways to use up all of that bandwidth. And that data is going to go somewhere. It's going to have to get stored somewhere. And as the cost of the storage keeps going down, like it does with Wasabi, it's not worth people's time to try to sort through it and figure out, geez, I should throw this away. I should throw this away. We're paying to store it. I don't need it anymore. It's just, if the storage were free, everybody would store everything forever. So it's not quite free yet, but it's getting down there to the point where it's like electricity. People don't bother to turn the light off because who cares, right? It's not worth the effort. And that's kind of where we're headed with storage. I mean, storage is going to be like electricity. It's going to be there in the data center. We've announced deals with data center operators where the data centers themselves now are starting to provide storage to their customers. So right now I walk through a Wasabi data center and there are cages for dozens of other companies. And every single one of those companies has had to make their own decision about how to store data. Storage is storage. It either stores it and gets it back or it doesn't. And there's some edge cases, but by and large, one size fits all. And you can, if you're in the data center business, you really ought to be thinking about getting beyond electricity, bandwidth, and space and air conditioning. Anybody can do that.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned you talk about turning the lights off, because even though like my house is all decked out with like the LED lighting and stuff that is really cheap to run, I still yell at my kids about turning the lights off when they leave a room. So not everybody's evolved past that.
I can remember, when my IT director would come charging down the hall and chew me out because my office mailbox was too big. Go clean out all that old junk. You don't need all those old emails. Nobody does that anymore because the storage is so cheap. So it's gradual, and it's a sliding scale. As the cost goes down, the amount of junk you store goes up. It's like your attic, there's never a good time to go up there and throw away all that old junk.
So true. It's so true. Well, we're running close to the end of time here, but what we would like to do is play a little game with you that we call 5 questions. So for those who are new to the show, or maybe never watched before, 5 questions is a game where Rich and I, off the top of our heads, we come up with 5 questions. The gist of it is that it's not going to be on topic. It's probably going to be wild and wacky stuff. No gotchas, nothing to embarrass you or anything like that. Just to learn a little bit more about you and a little bit more about who you are and your interests. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? You ready, David?
I'm all set.
Okay. I am going to take question 1 this time, Rich, because I am a selfish person. Question number 1 to you, David. I understand you are an avid gem collector, like rocks and gem geology kind of stuff. Tell us what your favorite 2 pieces that you have are.
Holy mackerel. Well, as you can see, if I turn my camera, you can see my home office here is full of crystals and gems. And you know, I also donated a wing to the Peabody Museum of Natural History at Yale. That has tons of other stuff that came from me. I couldn't pick a one favorite one. And but they're all, you know, the fact that this stuff comes out of the ground like this, it's nature's wonder, and it's phenomenal. And so, you know, most people think, oh, just rocks, but these things are just works of art, and they're stunningly beautiful.
So if you can't pick a favorite, how many pieces do you have?
Hundreds. I have no idea.
Wow.
I've been collecting since I was 8 years old. And, you know, since I started making money as an entrepreneur, I've been buying more and more, and miners and dealers all over the world know who I am. And if they have something that they know my tastes. So, you know, I get an email once a week or something. I was just looking at a fabulous aquamarine from Pakistan that some guy in Pakistan sent me an email this morning saying, do you want to buy this thing? And, you know, beautiful blue crystals that some jeweler will probably buy it and cut it up and turn it into a ring or earrings or something.
Super, super cool. All right, Rich, question number 2 to you.
Give me maybe your favorite crazy rock star story from once upon a time. Speaking of rocks, I guess.
Wow, crazy rock star story. Well, the best was, you know, hanging out in recording studios with the Who and people like that. The worst one was I get a call 2 in the morning one day, and it's the keyboard player for Steely Dan, and my synthesizer had died in the middle of a recording session. And I don't know what these guys were using, but he was livid. And he said, listen to this. And I hear all this crash, bang, etc. And he took my synthesizer and he put a stake through it and nailed it to the wall of the recording studio. And it stayed there for years. I visited that studio years later, and nobody would touch it because that was the Steely Dan ARP synthesizer.
So he turned it into wall art, and I guarantee that voided the warranty.
Did not fix the problem. Yeah.
All right. Question number 3 to me. So you talk about your synthesizers, and for those who obviously know a lot of those rock bands, you know that they're an important instrument and used lots, but they also are also world famous because of its use in a particular movie. So and for those who don't know the movie, it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when they're playing the song to communicate with the aliens. Yeah. So what was your reaction when you first heard your synthesizers in that movie and used in that context?
Well, you know, I mean, these movies take a long time to make. And, you know, one day I get a call from the producer and they said, well, we're going to make this movie called Close Encounters. And we need something really dramatic to communicate with this spaceship. And, you know, we'd like to feature your ARP, and we're going to give you all kinds of credits and everything else. Well, so we built this really expensive, huge synthesizer. We shipped it out there. And then they said, well, who's going to help us get this thing set up so that we can make it work? So I took my VP of engineering and sent him out, and they cast him for the movie. So in the movie itself, the guy playing the synthesizer worked for me. Only thing is, it took 6 months. He was gone. He was on my payroll for 6 months. They didn't pay me a nickel for having him out there, but every day there was a shoot or he'd waste time and so forth. And then, you know how they make the fog in a movie? It's boiled mineral oil. And so if you've ever seen a greasy synthesizer come back, we just threw it in the trash. I mean, it was probably a $50,000 piece of gear, but it was so gross when it came back. And then the credits went by so fast in the movie. But the better one is R2-D2. And I recently met the guy who did R2-D2 in Star Wars. And that was done on an ARP 2600, which was a synthesizer that I personally worked on. So that,
wow,
that
so you built the machine that makes R2-D2's noise.
Yep, yep. And most of the other sounds, almost, in fact, all of the sounds that are in the Star Wars movies were done on an ARP 2600.
It's amazing. All right, Rich, question number 4 to you.
And so I just actually this is like 3B because I'm fascinated by this. So that giant keyboard, the big synthesizer in the movie in Close Encounters, that's the one that you guys shipped over to them?
Yeah, and it's exactly the same one that George Harrison bought, and Pete Townsend of the Who, and Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin, and many others. Yeah, and unfortunately, it didn't come back in usable condition.
So we're talking about music that your synthesizers have been a part of, but you actually write music as well, as I understand it, and in fact, you even recently kind of worked that into the Wasabi side of your life. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm still involved in all, I'm being a frustrated musician. I'm still involved in all kinds of musical stuff around Boston, and both classical and jazz. I've been on the board of Berklee College of Music for probably 30 years. So, I get involved in all kinds of things. And we recently did, anybody who's been on the Wasabi website recently, see this really funny short movie that we did called Nate. And Nate's the IT director and trying to get his boss to come to his senses about moving to the cloud. And so I worked with the librettist and the composer on putting that together. We're doing another one right now, actually. I just can't keep my hands out of it. It's too much fun. And, it's nice to have a team that actually knows what they're doing, but I can get my 2 cents in here and there.
All right, so last question to me. If you were given a key to one of your data centers, would you A, fill it with rock formations, B, play with hard drives, or C, set up a synthesizer and go down and play music?
Wow, the acoustics in a data center are probably pretty cool, So if I had a big enough speaker system that I could overpower the roar of all the servers and everything else, that would be kind of a cool place for a concert.
That would be a cool place for a concert. All right, I love it. Great stuff. Unfortunately, we are out of time. David, I want to say big thanks for joining us here today and talking with us. You're a very, very interesting guy, and your background is just incredible. How you founded technology companies, but your synthesizers that you built were used in movies, and you've hang and partied with rock stars. We could talk with you all day, and I know we're going to have you back so we can hear more of your stories and interesting stuff. So for those who want to connect with you, learn a little bit about you, or learn about Wasabi Technologies and the opportunity for channel partners there, where can they go?
You can go to wasabi.com, and there's all kinds of ways to reach the company on wasabi.com. If you want to reach me personally, you can just send to CEO@wasabi.com, and that'll reach me.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we put a link to that website on our show notes page for this episode. So thanks again, David. We really appreciate having you on. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with some of our regular end of the show features. I've got a museum pick and a tech pick for you, and Rich will pull out his crystal ball and try to predict the future, which he gets right 28.6% of the time. So you won't want to miss that. Stick around. We will be right back.
Thanks, Matt.
And welcome back to part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. Rich, that was an amazing interview. What an interesting guy who's just, I don't know, you know, those people that just, they kind of find themselves in the right place at the right time constantly. And they're like, oh yeah, I was the one who built the synthesizer for that. And oh yeah, I used to hang out with the Who. And it's like, who are you? You know? Well, I don't know. I thought it was great. I can't wait to get that guy back on, because I bet he's got stories on stories that he could share.
Oh, absolutely. And I was thinking to myself, you know, why did we limit ourselves to 5 questions? It could have been 10, 20 questions. I'm sure all would have been interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Look further, a little further down the road, and let's get him back. Maybe even as a guest host. He could be a guest host.
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure.
Could be interesting. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll figure that out. All right. I know we're running a little long, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna plow through our museum and tech picks. We were thinking about not doing a museum pick, but I really wanted to do one because this is an interesting one. Because I was digging through a bin, Rich, as many of these museum pick stories start. I was digging through a bin and I came across something kind of interesting that I bet not many people have actually seen in person. So my museum pick this week is this little box, and it says NETGEAR on it. This is according to the sticker on the bottom. This is the HD 1000. Now, Rich, here's something that's really interesting. The HD 1000 didn't really exist as a product. This was actually a pre-production kind of beta product for a different thing that NETGEAR ultimately ended up releasing, and that was the Digital Entertainer Live. So let me set the scene for you, because the company I used to work for, we were working with NETGEAR, and we did a lot of work with the Digital Entertainer series, and this was like the third or fourth iteration of that product that they were coming out. So, and I had just ended up, I guess, holding on to the beta unit that we were working with, so we could kind of prep stuff. So the Digital Entertainer series, that line of products existed at a time before streaming was like super big, where like now everything is basically streamed from the cloud. Everything is an app on a device. You launch the app and you stream content from the cloud, and that's how it all works. But back in the day, like Netflix was around, and like you could stream from Netflix to a computer, and there was maybe the early days of like the Roku, which was the first set top device that could stream from Netflix. But most of the digital media content that you were consuming was usually on your PC. And you'd have, that was the heyday of torrenting, and you'd have, digital movie files, and you'd rip your CD library into your computer, and you wanted some way to play that on your TV or on your stereo. So there was this whole line of products, not just from NETGEAR, but from other companies as well, that were kind of built around the idea of streaming media, not from a cloud service, but to a box from your PC. And so the Digital Entertainer was NETGEAR's answer to that, and they had the first iteration was a kind of a big gray box. It was like TV component width, so it was like the same width as like a Blu-ray player or VCR at the time, and it had little antennas on it, and then it would connect, and there was software that ran on your computer, and you'd build like network shares for media content, and then you could browse and stream your music or video files or whatever on your stereo using your TV screen. Well, the third iteration of that product was this, which is when cloud streaming was just kind of starting to kind of take off, and NETGEAR was trying to be a part of the cloud streaming service market. But it was weird how it worked, and ultimately it didn't work very well, I have to say, because there was no like Netflix app on this. You had to use a service called PlayOn at the time in order to stream Netflix to your computer, which would then kind of get it over to this box somehow. And there was a couple like real early kind of cloud services that it was connected to, but the primary focus was still media on your PC and streaming that over. But it ultimately wasn't a very good experience, which is kind of why it's all kind of gone all up to the cloud, because it's a much better experience that way than this was. But I thought it might be interesting that folks who may not have ever seen that often when you see a product, there was usually a pre-production product that looks nothing like the product they ultimately released. And I actually brought it up here so that way I could show people what it actually looked like when it was what it would actually look like when it was released. So let me go ahead and I will put that up. If you're watching on YouTube, you're gonna see that. So Rich, you see that there? That's ultimately what they released. If you see that there, which does not look like that, does it?
Yeah, they in what you're holding there, they weren't going for style points necessarily.
Yeah, much more basic. Yeah, the other one was the one they released was much more stylish than this one was. But I thought that was kind of cool that that is probably something that people had never seen before, as a kind of a pre-production kind of beta model. So obviously NETGEAR doesn't make those anymore. It's not really they kind of got pushed out of the set top streaming hardware, and they don't really, I don't think they have any products in that line anymore. That market's basically been ceded to pretty much, Apple, Roku, and Amazon for the most part. So pretty cool, huh? Did you ever have anything like this? Did you ever do like home streaming before, like from your computer, like before streaming was a thing?
A little bit of that, from like an old laptop I hooked up to my television, and but something like that actually would have been handy, because I don't remember a lot about that process. I just remember it was trickier than you would think to make it all work somehow.
Yeah, I ultimately, that was kind of what I did. I just hooked a computer up. I built a home theater PC, and that was just on my television set, and that was my DVR for a long time, and it was how I streamed stuff from the internet, and all that stuff. But it was handy if you had other things, elsewhere. But if you just had an office and you didn't have a dedicated computer you can hook up to your TV, solutions like this existed to try and bridge that gap and get that media elsewhere in the home, which was pretty fun. So that leads me to my tech pick. And so I like to kind of say, well, that was then, this is now. And today, things like this, I'm sure there are still some companies that build, devices that are still dedicated around streaming and playing digital media from network sources. But it's kind of a niche market now. It's not really like a mainstream thing anymore. But the market the market for streaming devices is huge. And I did mention a couple companies that that pretty much own that market. So I went ahead and I decided to pick one of those. So the device that I have picked, let me get it up on the screen here. I have chosen the Roku Ultra. The Roku Ultra is a modern day streaming device. This one is kind of their newest one, supports Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, has apps on apps on apps. You can stream, from practically every cloud service imaginable, voice remote with TV controls, shortcut buttons. And what's interesting about this one, I've never seen this before, and I love Roku because they like to try different things, is they built a headphone jack directly into the remote control, which is kind of cool. So you can plug headphones right into the remote and listen privately, which is kind of cool. Isn't that neat, Rich?
I've got the Roku 3 in my living room, and the remote that came with that has that headphone feature, and I literally use that every day. In fact, when I'm on my exercise bike, so that I can actually hear whatever it is that's on TV over the sound.
Interesting. I didn't know they'd put that feature out before, because all of the Rokus that I've had haven't had that, so I thought that was kind of a new thing. But that's really cool. So I think I've got a couple of Rokus here in the house, and they work great. And big fan. They stream from everything. They have neat features, and they're pretty affordable. That one that I chose there is like their ultimate one. That one is $99. Amazing how cheap this stuff is. But even like their really good HD Stick Plus, which supports 4K, it's like $50. Like these things are really, really reasonable, and there's a wealth of content at your fingertips with these kind of things. Is that so? You still use your Roku 3? That's what you have?
Yeah. I've got a Roku 3 in the living room, and then one of the USB sticks in the bedroom. Yeah,
very cool. I know I brought it on the show once before, but I actually have the original Roku 1. That was my museum pick. I have to go back and look at what episode it was, but I know I showed it off on the show. And the reason why I picked that particular day is because I chose that as my museum pick. The the week that Netflix was no longer supported on it. So like it was like the first Netflix capable device, right? And then to me, well, as soon as you can't play Netflix on it anymore, that's when it was destined for the museum. So fun stuff to show off. So that's my museum pick, the NETGEAR Digital Entertainer Live Beta Edition, and the museum pick, the Roku Ultra. Rich, why don't you go ahead and tell us what Mr. Gaskin has in store for us in case we missed it, and tell us what might be coming down the road.
Will do. Yeah. So, you know, if you want to kind of catch up on all sorts of news that we didn't maybe necessarily get a chance to talk about in the podcast or even write about in our homepage, the place to go every Friday is Mr. James Gaskin's In Case You Missed It column. This week, he's going to be talking about actually a pretty big announcement in the news that we didn't touch on here, which was Veeam buying Kasten to add container backup to the expanding Veeam portfolio. It's the kind of thing that sounded inevitable as soon as it was announced. So interesting move there. Google has rebranded G Suite. Domotz is now integrating their RMM software with the ConnectWise managed PSA product. Lots more news than that. And, you know, lots of the kind of serious, heavy stuff, let's face it, going on in the world right now. James and I were exchanging emails earlier today. What else can we kind of work into this week's In Case You Missed It that might be a little more lighthearted and fun? And we came up with this story. How many scoops of ice cream can one person actually balance on a cone? You will find out this week in Case You Missed It. And it's a rather large number. It's more ice cream than even I, and I really like ice cream. I would not want to eat a cone this big. Now, in terms of next week is going to be busy, folks. So ConnectWise is hosting their very first IT Nation Secure event, a security-focused IT Nation conference, 2 days. For that, SolarWinds MSP has a virtual roadshow event coming up. And then next week is going to be a big week for innovation-themed virtual conferences as well. Ingram is doing their first Cloud Blue Innovators Forum event. HP has a HP Innovation Summit event coming up. SAP is doing their What's Next events. A lot of innovation-focused kind of events, and then big shows from SolarWinds and ConnectWise too.
Sounds like a very interesting week ahead. And you know, the stories like how many scoops of ice cream you can balance on a cone, that is the kind of hard-hitting journalism you'll find here at ChannelPro, answering life's toughest questions.
Exactly. Getting to the bottom of these difficult issues.
Fantastic. Well, that is going to be a wrap for episode 162. Big thanks to our guest host today, Josh Weiss. Unfortunately, couldn't be with us the whole show, but was on for a good chunk. We'll definitely get him back. Great having him on. Thank you so much for that. And also another big thanks to David Friend, President and CEO of Wasabi Technologies, for sitting down with a great interview with us today. And I hope we get to talk to him again down the road in the future too. So without further ado, what do you do when you want to get the maximum amount of ChannelPro Weekly in your life? You subscribe. You go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere where podcasts are aggregated and distributed, and subscribe. That way, everywhere you are, anywhere you are, in the car, on the job site, going between wherever, sitting in the office, poof, new episodes of ChannelPro Weekly will just magically appear right there for you to listen to and to keep you not only entertained, but informed as well. If you'd like to watch, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button and the bell to get notifications so you can be with us each and every week as we sit down and talk with these great guests all of the time, and all of the news and all the articles. And you know where else you can get news and articles, Rich? I bet you don't know.
I'm waiting to hear.
You can get them at channelpronetwork.com is the website. And actually, I think you do know that because you're the one who puts them there most of the time. So I believe you're familiar with it, but channelpronetwork.com is the website. Set it as your homepage and your start page. Each and every time you turn on your laptop or computer, you'll find articles, news, information, white papers, downloads, podcasts, anything and everything to keep you informed, and great advice to help you improve your business, make more money, retain customers, improve everything. All kinds of topics. Rich, the topics spread the gamut. Just name like 4 things that somebody could learn just by looking at the homepage right now.
Oh, right now. You know what? Let's do that. Let's actually do that right now.
Put them on the spot. What are 4 things somebody can learn right now?
right now. We call up, so you will learn about WatchGuard and their evolution from firewall company to full-blown security. They have fully integrated endpoint security into their portfolio. You will read a really interesting a column, an opinion piece from Satima Fowler, who, by the way, is going to be guest hosting this podcast with us next week or the week after that. She wrote a terrific piece for our October issue about turning differences into advantages as well, and we'll get into that with her actually next week. But it's about the power of diversity and in actually making your business stronger. There's some great advice from Grady Gaussman at BitTitan about things you can do to avoid commoditization as an MSP. Very important topic. Let's see, NetSuite has micro vertical, a partner program for partners who are targeting micro verticals, not just, retail, but a specific niche within retail. They've introduced resources that can help you do that and actually bring that product to market with and through their sales force. Matt, I could go on. Great stuff like that shows up on our website literally every day.
Yep, all the time, all day, every day. Point your web browser and don't miss a single bit of it. Please join us on the social networks. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, anywhere where social things happen. Trust me, we're there. At ChannelPro SMB on Twitter, ChannelPro Network on Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, if you have any comments, questions, send us an email. We'd love to hear from listeners and viewers. Comment on YouTube if you're there. The email address is podcast@channelpronetwork.com. So send us your emails. We'd love to get those. We'll talk about them here on the show and more. Great stuff. Go there all the time. And we will see you all in episode 163 next week.